When you think of George Washington, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's that stoic face on the dollar bill, right? Or maybe that epic painting of him crossing the Delaware. He feels less like a real person and more like, well, a monument carved out of stone. But here's the thing. Beneath that marble facade, there's a far more compelling, and frankly, a more human story. It's the story of a leader who was forged not just by his legendary victories, but by devastating losses, brutal political battles, and absolute near disasters that pushed him to his limits. And to find that story, we have to go back way before the Revolution. We're not starting in some grand capital city, but out in the rugged, untamed, and pretty unforgiving wilderness of colonial America. Washington's youth was anything but easy. It was basically a crash course in adult responsibility. At 16, he's already a professional surveyor, out there mapping the wilderness. But then life hits him hard. He takes his only trip out of the country, sees his beloved half-brother die, and then bam, at 21, he's sent on a dangerous diplomatic mission that kicks off his military career. It was a whirlwind of responsibility, loss, and conflict. That one trip to Barbados really changed him. On one hand, he was just blown away by the British military forts he saw, just this incredible display of organized power. But on the other hand, he caught smallpox, and this wasn't a mild case. It was a terrifying disease that almost killed him and left him scarred for life. Talk about a brutal first-hand lesson in survival. And those early lessons in just trying to survive would come to define his most famous role: General of the Continental Army. But the image we all have of this invincible, perfect commander, well, that doesn't quite line up with what actually happened. So here's the paradox. The myth is that he was this flawless, battlefield genius. The reality? Let's be honest. Washington was not a brilliant tactician. He actually lost more major battles than he won. His true genius was something else entirely. His real talent, his superpower, was holding the army together when it should have completely fallen apart. This quote really nails it. You have an army with no supplies, no pay, and states that just refuse to help. The fact that he kept them from all just going home is, well, it's called a miracle for a reason. That was his genius. This really gets to the heart of his strategy. Look at battles like Long Island or Brandywine. He was outmaneuvered, he lost on the battlefield. But, and this is the crucial part, he always saved his army. He always managed to retreat and escape complete destruction. He understood something fundamental. As long as the Continental Army still existed, the revolution was still alive. So after the war, Washington becomes president. You'd think, okay, the hardest part is over. He was very wrong. The next battle he faced would be for the very soul of the new nation he'd helped create. The problem came from across the ocean. The French Revolution started out as this inspiring event, kind of like America's sequel. But then it turned incredibly bloody and chaotic. And that chaos didn't just stay in Europe. It ignited a political firestorm right in Washington's own administration. You had his two most important advisors, Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, on completely opposite sides. Jefferson's camp was all in for France, seeing them as brothers in the fight for liberty. But Hamilton's Federalists looked at the chaos in France with horror and wanted to side with the stability of Britain. Their feud wasn't just a political disagreement, it got personal, it got bitter, and it honestly threatened to rip the young country in two. So to stop the country from being torn apart, Washington made a very bold and hugely controversial decision. He declared America neutral. He basically said, this isn't our fight. This made a lot of people furious, especially those who felt we owed France big time for their help during our own revolution. And this whole crisis really came to a head with this one guy, the French ambassador, Citizen Genet. This dude shows up and just completely ignores American neutrality. He starts trying to turn American ports into French naval bases, recruiting Americans for his own side wars. The nerve. Then he goes a step too far. He actually threatens to go over Washington's head and appeal directly to the American people. It was a direct challenge to the president's authority and to the idea that America was even a sovereign nation. So, after surviving all of that, when Washington finally decided to step down, his famous farewell address wasn't just him giving some wise philosophical advice. Nope. It was a direct, deeply personal warning forged in the fire of the crises he had just barely managed to navigate. And here's a fun fact. He never actually delivered it as a speech.
He had it published in the newspapers as a public letter so every single citizen could read his final thoughts. It was his last lesson to the country, and every word was based on the hard-earned and often bitter experiences he had just gone through.
So when he warned everyone about the spirit of party, he wasn't just talking theory. He was thinking specifically about the vicious, toxic infighting between Hamilton and Jefferson that he had to deal with every single day. He'd seen firsthand how it could paralyze a government, and he was terrified it would eventually destroy the republic from within. And when he warned about getting tangled up in foreign alliances, you can bet he was having flashbacks to the whole Citizen Jeanette affair. He was basically saying, look what almost happened. Let's stay out of Europe's endless quarrels because they'll only drag us into wars that have nothing to do with us. And his warning about public debt, that came straight from remembering the absolute nightmare of trying to fund the revolution with no money and the huge fights over the nation's finances afterward. For him, being fiscally responsible was about one thing: true independence. So Washington's final message wasn't just a goodbye. It was a summary of his life's toughest challenges and a set of really urgent warnings for the future. And, looking at our world today with all of its deep political divisions and complicated global politics, the question he left us with feels more relevant than ever. Have we actually heeded his warning?